Travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Time to talk travel and tourism. Look, I'm a member of several large travel groups on social media that I follow for various bits of inspiration and information. And I've learned over the years that there is almost no limit to the number of rookie errors that even seasoned travelers can make, from not getting transit visas for their stopover to huge penalties for overweight luggage they didn't calculate correctly. There's so many things that can go wrong. But one of the most common threads that just seems to appear over and over and over again on these platforms is problems with passports and the many different ways in which a passport issue can scupper a well-laid plan, and expensive one at that. From not having enough blank pages left to only realizing your passport is on the verge of expiry 10 days before you travel. Sometimes you only find out when you are turned away from boarding the flight. Things can go wrong in a heartbeat. So today in our travel and tourism feature, we're going to focus on passport issues and try and tackle a couple of the common questions about things that can go wrong with them. With me on the line is Lynette Machiri, who is a customer experience leader at Flight Centre South Africa. Lynette, we appreciate your time this afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pippa. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Machiri, Lynette, it might sound like a silly question, but from a legal perspective, what does a passport represent? Can you explain why it's a document that's really not to be taken or toyed with lightly?
Well, a passport is an official document, just like your identity document, that the government issues to its citizens that allows them to travel from one country to the other. So it's really an official document that belongs to the government. And as such, it comes with responsibilities to the owner or the holder of the passport.
Responsibilities, that you really, you have a responsibility to look after it and keep it in the form in which it was issued. Lynette, that's one of the things some people struggle with. I've seen photographs shared of passports with ripped pages or coffee spilled on them or really tatty covers. What's the risk of letting your document get into that condition?
So obviously damage to your passport can render it invalid. And believe it or not, if your passport has corners that are really bent and out of shape, because remember, any border control officials need to verify that it is you, that you're traveling, and that this document belongs to you. So anything that compromises the ability to verify that identity, which can be in the form of those sort of damages, it can be water damage, your children might draw in it, that can render it invalid.
Okay, so really important to try and keep it somewhere safe and look after it well and keep it in good shape, because getting into that condition can imperil it. The other thing that can render it invalid, Lynette, is any kind of non-official stamp going into it. And I was intrigued to see a post the other day about so-called souvenir passport stamps and the fact that those can actually pose quite a problem for you. Do you want to explain what those are and why they're problematic?
Yes, absolutely. So these are novelty passport stamps that some destinations offer to its visitors. So, for instance, Machu Picchu, they offer those novelty stamps, and it's a great thing to have. It's for any traveler, a sign that you've been to that place. However, like I mentioned, a passport is an official document, and you only need to have border control officials putting stamps in any markings into the passport. So if it's found that you've got one of these souvenir stamps, you may actually be denied boarding, and that can cost a lot of money, because you have to apply for a new passport, and depending on where you are, changing your travel plans. So it can be quite involving.
So if you want to collect them, get yourself some or other kind of book to collect them in, is the bottom line, Lynette. Don't let them go near your actual passport.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We recommend a travel journal for anyone who wants to collect souvenir stamps from destinations that they visit.
Okay. Now, the other big point of concern and argument and anxiety on the travel groups that I'm a part of is the issue of how full or empty your passport needs to be. I know a lot of people find it absurd to be told you must have 6 blank pages in your passport, for example, in order for it to be deemed valid by some countries. Lynette, can you explain why that is?
Well, remember, you have to have space for passport stamps, and you never know, some countries, they might put a full-on page stamp in your passport upon your arrival in their country. So you definitely need to ensure that you've got enough space. And I think we say, as a rule of thumb, at least 2 blank pages, but this might vary depending on the country that you're going to.
Yeah.
So a recommendation, always check with the embassy of the country that you're visiting, just to double check all these details.
Because some of them might have things like 2 pages consecutively or next to each other, not just scattered anywhere in the document. It's really, really important to check the fine granular detail, not so?
Yes, no, absolutely, because remember, like I said, it varies from one country to the other, where in South Africa, they might just say you need to have 2 blank pages. It may exactly be that the pages must be one after the other and not one in the middle. And because sometimes immigration officials don't always stamp in some pages, they might skip a page and stamp on page 25. That does happen. So yes, absolutely, it's something that you need to check with the embassy.
Okay. The other thing to check is a very important issue Tony has just raised on email. Tony asking, how many months validity after your point of return is the norm these days? I've heard a lot of people freaked out by this because some countries want your passport to be valid for 6 months beyond your date of return. Lynette, some of them are just fine as long as it's valid for the dates you're going to be there. Is there any kind of standard, or is it a case of country by country you need to check?
So again, we go with a standard of 6 months from the date of your return. That seems to be almost the most restrictive one. However, some countries are lenient and they allow a lesser amount of time, validity. If it's valid for the duration of your travel, some countries are okay with, you traveling with a passport like that. However, from the time that your passport is within that 6 months to expiration, you are able to go in and put in, I think within that year, it's always to consult with Home Affairs officials if it's that that you are due to travel and your passport might not have sufficient validity. Or even, with the blank pages, if it's almost full, you can apply for a new one whilst there's still time.
Yeah. And again, you get charged a fee if you apply more than 6 months before the date of expiration, but it's sometimes better just to grit your teeth and swallow that extra fee, Lynette, to know that you are covered, that whatever might come up, whatever business trip or travel opportunity comes your way, you've got sufficient longevity in the document to be able to say, yes, I want to do that trip.
Definitely, because obviously the cost that you might incur to change your travel are always going to be more than what you were going to pay to renew your passport earlier.
We are, just for anybody who's come in midway in this conversation, my guest is Lynette Machiri, joining us on the line from Gauteng, Customer Experience Leader at Flight Centre South Africa. Lynette, somebody asking, why is it that some people are turned away by the airline before boarding? Surely these things should be picked up when you're going through the border control officials at the airport. Do you want to talk a little bit about whose responsibility lies where?
So because the passport belongs to who it's issued to, the traveller is responsible to ensure that they have the correct travel documentation. So depending on, where you've booked, if you've booked with a travel agent, always ask those questions. The travel agent is usually always able to advise you of any of those travel requirements. Otherwise, if you're making a booking online, for instance, then definitely do the research, but always go to the source. This could be either the issuing authority of the documentation in our country, that's the Department of Home Affairs, otherwise the embassy of the country you are traveling to. You can find those details on DIRCO's website of the relevant embassies where you can contact to verify requirements of your passport
Okay, thank you for that. I think if I'm reading correctly into this question, what they're asking is, how is it possible that somebody can get through, check in for their flight, get through passport control, and only be turned away at the boarding gate by the airline staff? How can that happen?
Well, I think it's various issues, and I think usually whenever we have any denied boarding cases, we look at it on a case-by-case basis. It all depends on why that would have been. You know, there are all those checks that you go through at the airport. So, you know, to try and prevent you getting denied boarding right at the end, it's not an ideal situation. You know, when you arrive, the security checks your details. At check-in, your details get checked in, get checked again. And then at immigration, you know, they get checked again. It may be that perhaps maybe it's flagged after the fact, but however, that would always depend on the specific cases that, you know, come through in terms of those denied boardings, because it can be various things. Yeah.
Lynette, you've obviously you referenced earlier on to have your passport declared invalid when you're standing in a foreign country trying to fly home is going to be an expensive, disastrous experience. Now, let's talk about what to do in an experience like that. Firstly, is it at all helpful to travel with a copy of your passport? On the off chance that you unfortunately lose it or are robbed or something like that in a foreign country, is it helpful to have a copy or even a certified copy of the document with you? Is that really going to mean anything?
Well, I think if you do have a copy with you, it would be great, because some people do keep their passport in the safe and they travel with a copy of it in case maybe they do encounter authorities that may ask for identification. Because you're in a foreign country, your passport is your form of identification. So definitely to ensure that your passport stays safe. That might help. However, you know, as always, I think what's best to always have is the contact of the South African embassy of the country to which you're visiting in case of emergency and you need assistance with obtaining a new document. You know, in the likely event that perhaps maybe your passport is deemed invalid. Okay. I think that's always because you want to now maybe arrange for an emergency travel document to get you back home.
Okay, thank you for that. Lastly, just a word of caution. I know that at Flight Centre you've warned about being careful of letting people see your passport details on social media. Great thing to take a selfie of me holding my passport at the airport as I set off for the wonderful trip I've planned. But Lynette, unfortunately, it's not only your friends and family looking at those photos, not so?
No, not all the time. Hey, depending on the privacy settings on your social media, you may end up exposing yourself to criminal elements that may steal your information, you know, and then you get fraud. People take over your identity, and that can get very, very messy. So you always want to ensure that, you know, you're not oversharing, even your boarding pass, because remember, it's got sensitive information on there. Whenever you're traveling, it's great to share on Instagram, Facebook, and all these other social media sites. However, it's always being mindful of the risk of the information that you might end up exposing to people that you don't want to expose it to.
Lynette, thank you for that word of caution. It's so easy to forget about these things when you're taking the fun pick to start the holiday. But imagine going on holiday and coming home to find all kinds of credit cards and purchases made in your name because somebody's trolled that information and mined it for your data. Lynette Machiri, thank you so much for your help this afternoon. Appreciate that advice that you've shared on just how important it is to keep your passport safe and intact. Lynette is Customer Experience Leader at Flight Centre South Africa, talking to us there from Gauteng. Alistair commenting on WhatsApp, I think it's that the airline is responsible to take you back if the destination country denies you entry. So if they think you don't have the correct documentation, they would rather stop you from boarding in the first place. That does seem to make sense. Alistair, thank you for that piece of insight. Maybe there's somebody listening who works in the airline industry who can confirm that that is the reason why somebody might be turned away literally at the gate as they're trying to board the plane rather than earlier in the process.
Travel isn't just about destinations. It's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabotja, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place, whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.